Welcome everyone. It's day 307, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and Russia and Belarus, they've achieved progress that can take years for some countries during talks at an informal two-day gathering of leaders of the Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS, in Russia's second city, St. Petersburg. Well, this is according to Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, who was speaking before reporters at the start of bilateral discussions today with Russian President Vladimir Putin on the sidelines of the CIS summit that opened yesterday. Last week, Mr. Lukashenko hosted Putin in Minsk, a rare foreign visit for the Russian president. The meeting there prompted speculation that Mr. Putin was seeking to cajole Belarus into joining Russia's military campaign in Ukraine, something Lukashenko has so far declined to do. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy says the situation at the front in the Donbas region is difficult and painful and requires all of the country's strength and concentration. President Zelenskiy made this known in his nightly video address. He also said that the power shortages are persisting, with nearly 9 million people remaining without electricity. Mr. Zelenskiy said that power workers repairing the grid after repeated Russian attacks had reconnected many people over Christmas, but problems remained.
Bakhmut, Crimea and other areas in Donbas which now require maximum strength and concentration. The situation there is difficult and painful. The occupiers are using all the resources available to them, and these are considerable resources, to achieve at least some advance. And I thank all our boys who stand in their positions, stand strong, and who nevertheless find opportunities not only to lose anything, but to knock out the occupiers, to minus them. I want to thank all those working for energy companies and all the repair crews for the fact that during Saturday and Sunday, on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, it was possible to give people more energy. Of course, power deficits remain. Power outages continue. As of this evening, about 9 million people are disconnected in various regions of Ukraine, but the number and duration of outages are still gradually decreasing. I thank each and everyone who made this result possible.
For the residents in Bakhmut, the constant explosions have become a normal occurrence, especially for the elderly. A large residential building burned in the central region as fighting between Ukrainian and Russian forces raged on, and the sound of shelling echoed across the town. The few remaining residents, mostly elderly, said they witnessed explosions, destructions and bombings daily in the embattled Donbas frontline town. Among them is 85-year-old Alexander, who is the only remaining resident in the apartment block which caught fire. He said that his apartment is destroyed and they do not have any heating. The eastern Ukrainian city has become the target of Russian attempts to advance in fighting that has killed thousands of soldiers. And a drone believed to be Ukrainian penetrated hundreds of miles through Russian airspace, causing a deadly explosion at the main base for Moscow's strategic bombers. Surveillance video captured the explosion on Monday in Russia, hundreds of miles from the Ukrainian frontier. The culprit for the deadly blast at the main base for Moscow's long-range bomber was a drone believed to be Ukrainian. Moscow says 3 service members died when it shot the drone down. Some accounts said planes were damaged, although Russia said they weren't. The incident could be the latest attack to expose gaps in Russia's air defenses. The same base was struck just 3 weeks earlier by a suspected drone. Well, let's talk some more about the situation with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Joining us now is Mr. John Essin. He's a lawyer, defense and security expert, also founder of GLOSP, a UK-based security think tank. He joins me now for more. Thank you. Welcome to the program and compliments of the season.
I'm glad to be here, Minister. Thank you for having me.
Let's begin with what Russia's Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, saying, issuing an ultimatum to Ukraine to accept Moscow's proposals, which include surrendering territory that Russia controls, or its army would decide the issue. What do you make of this?
Well, they've been trying to decide the issue for the last 11 months, and they haven't been able to. It even culminated in them changing strategies from targeting Ukrainian civilians to striking at their critical infrastructure. You mentioned a few minutes ago about the electric grid and, of course, the water supply systems. I think the initial idea was to weaponize the winter and frustrate civilian Ukrainians so they can pressure the government to negotiate. But so far that hasn't worked. So I think that comment about giving the Ukrainians an ultimatum was informed as well by Zelenskyy's recent visit to WDC and the capital, and the success he made of that trip, because he came away with the Patriot surface-to-air missile system, which is one of the most advanced in the world. He's been asking for it for ages, and he's eventually gotten it. So I think that frustrated Lavrov, and that comment was made as a result of that as well.
When you say that, you know, this war has been going on for almost 11 months, don't you think, or wouldn't you say, that Russia has largely succeeded? And this is by damaging a lot of Ukrainian properties. Many people have died. To a large extent, Russia is winning this war.
Not necessarily, Millicent. I don't agree with you. I recall saying on this program, and this is not just me saying it, this is a doctrine of war. You can have, like Russia has, overwhelming superior conventional capabilities. You can even have a numerical advantage, like Russia has, and even better training. All those can win you battles, which is what Russia has been winning. But to win the war, you need something more. You need fundamentally a core element of the will to fight. Russia lacks that, and Ukraine has it. I know that the West has been supporting Ukraine, and without the West, without Western support, Ukraine wouldn't have come this far. But I think it's because Ukraine has been able to demonstrate that component, that if it comes to winning the war, it has staying power and it will eventually win. Battles don't win you wars. You can have every other thing and they can win you battles, but if you don't have the will to fight, and that's what Russia has been lacking, eventually you lose the war, and you eventually lose.
Well, when you look at perhaps President Zelenskyy's visit to the United States, there were so many things that we heard about, such as the grants which the US offered Ukraine again, and also Congress, also, of course, the Patriot missile. Do you see that playing any role changing the game with regards to this war? We know that is still expected.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why Zelensky has been asking for it for a long time, but it's only now that the Americans have agreed to give it to him. It can protect whole cities, because I think it has about 8 launchers, and it has 2 batteries as well. It's very advanced. And one of the reasons Lavrov was very upset, because he made that statement after Zelensky's visit, is because he knows the impact that will have on the war. And all of the 300 air defense systems, the Soviet-era air defense systems that the Ukrainians have been using, can be diverted or redeployed to others, to be other services where they can serve better. So it's going to have an impact, definitely.
But then, of course, Russia has warned that these provocations that they have called, with the support Ukraine is getting from the West, could lead to perhaps more consequences. Perhaps things could get worse than it is. But let's talk about what Ukraine is witnessing. And this is several blackouts due to destruction to their infrastructure. We understand that nearly 9 million people remain without electricity. Is there any link to Ukraine's power plants, especially that of Zaporizhia?
I think there is, because Zaporizhia gives electricity directly to Crimea. So what Russia is trying to do is sever all of Ukraine from that plant so that it doesn't supply any electricity to Ukraine. But it's also intended to break Ukrainians, the average Ukrainians, because about 9 billion people is approximately 25% of Ukraine's entire Ukraine's population. And that is enough to swing a government policy. It's enough to put pressure on the government to negotiate, which is what Russia is looking for at the moment. But it was hoping that it might be able to do that, by weaponizing the winter. Because of this, Ukrainians are finding this period very difficult. The mere fact that the Americans received Zelenskiy the way they did underscores and reinforces America's support for Ukraine in this war, and by extension NATO and the West. So that's going to play a big part. Yes.
Let's talk more about the front lines. British Ministry of Defense said that over the past 48 hours, fighting in Ukraine has remained the heaviest around the Bakhmut region. One wonders how much territory has changed hands since.
Russia is making very incremental gains, and Ukraine is not quite bothered about how much gains they're making, because they can recoup those gains when this help comes from the U.S. Why Bakhmut is very important is because it's sandwiched between Donetsk and Luhansk in the Donbas region. And the reason the Russians think they need it, why it's strategic for the Russians, is because it can serve as a line of communications and a logistics hub, so that they can transition or transit a military hardware between Donetsk and Luhansk, and between the Luhansk and Donetsk, depending on where they need it. But for the Ukrainians, they don't want them taking it for the same reason, because it will affect their efforts in the war, and it will prevent them from accessing Crimea, because you can access Crimea much easier from Bakhmut than from anywhere else in Ukraine. So it's very important for both major parties in the war that someone keeps Bakhmut.
On the path to peace between both countries, Ukraine's foreign minister said that his nation wants a summit to end the war, but he doesn't anticipate Russia taking part. Do you anticipate that the peace summit is possible and within 2 months, also at the United Nations with the UN Secretary General as mediator? Do you see this happening?
Absolutely not, and I'll tell you why. On the one hand, we've heard Vladimir Putin say the same thing, that he wants to negotiate, that they're ready to negotiate. But on the other hand, you just said a few minutes ago about Lavrov issuing an ultimatum. That is what we call double speaking from both sides of your mouth. The Russians cannot be trusted. At best, those comments are disingenuous. At worst, they're insincere. They are sincerely insincere. They are dishonest. And Ukraine knows that negotiating at this point would get them anything, because Russia is not prepared to concede any ground at all to the Ukrainians. Because Putin has backed himself into a corner, and he's the kind of human being that if he has a 1% chance, he's going to leverage it if he can come out of this problem. But on the other hand, the Ukrainians know that freedom comes with a high price, but slavery comes with even a higher price. So they're prepared to stick it out and get all of Ukraine back. Because any piece of real estate that belongs to Ukraine that is apportioned to Russia will serve as a launching pad for future warfare. So, and Ukraine knows that, so they are not going to. These are diametrically opposed, independent and irreconcilable postures, and they are ideological. If their differences were ones you could resolve with pragmatism, or say, if they were practical, that would be different. but these differences are ideological, so they're deep-rooted and they're entrenched. Sorry, so I don't see, I don't see that gap closing. I don't see that gap, closing.
What do you make
Rather,
of
actually widening over time?
At this time, what do you make of Mr. Lukashenko's relationship with President Putin?
He's very close to Putin. But
even closer now.
Sorry?
Some would say even closer now.
He is, but that's not going to make any difference because the Belarusian army has made it very clear to him that they don't want to be a part of what's happening in Ukraine. Otherwise, the military would have been deployed into Ukraine by now. But the military has made that very clear. So, but what Putin is trying to do, I hear that even there's that deployment in that area and that there's a kind of a build-up of the military. But what he's trying to do is compel the Ukraine into maybe thinking that there might be an attack on Kiev, because Kiev is very near to the border with Ukraine's border with Belarus. So what Putin is trying to do is see if Ukraine can deploy some of the forces on the other front lines to defend Kiev from Belarus, and maybe leave other front lines thinner, like Bakhmut, for instance, to give Putin the opportunity to penetrate and and get on the other side. But if I know this, then Ukraine must know it. So they know they're all putting it's just a farce. It's not going to happen.
On the other hand, if we look at Zelenskyy's relationship with India, very recently he says that he's seeking India's help with sort of implementing a peace formula. This is in a recent phone call with Prime Minister Modi. But India has not explicitly condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Do you see them taking sides now?
At the very best, it'll be a tacit endorsement. It wouldn't be clear, because even after the Second World War, from when India gained its independence from the British, it's always been non-aligned. A bit like Switzerland, it's never aligned itself with any country, and that policy has not changed. So it's a policy that has been entrenched in India's history, and more than 50% of India's weapons come from Russia. So it invests heavily in Russia for its defense and security. And it's very unlikely that Zelensky is going to get anything out of India, because India will be looking for what to get out of him. I think, on the other hand, India is looking to this visit to Zelensky's visit to the U.S. might maybe change Modi's mind, but it won't be for now. He's going to wait and see which way the war swings, and whoever it's more likely to win the war will inform his decision whether to stick with Ukraine or stick with Russia. Because if he abandons Russia, he needs to find where he can buy those weapons he's currently getting from Russia, and he's getting oil as well at very cheap, just like China, at a very cheap price for now. So it benefits him to stick with Russia for now, and I don't see that changing in the near future. If it changes, it will be it will be dependent on the way the war swings, whether Ukraine wins it or Russia.
All right, Mr. John Essay is a lawyer, defense security expert, founder Glossby, a UK-based security think tank. Thank you so much for joining us on this issue as we continue to hope for the best for both countries to resolving this dispute. And it looks like I will be seeing you in the new year. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Minister. Have a happy new year as well.
To you as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.